with the recall of Parliament set for the 8th of April next week by the Supreme Court, the entire political landscape is going to change. But my concern is the dangerous attack on democracy by one man to sustain himself in power. Now, the ruling of the Supreme Court is welcome news for Papua New Guinea and the rest of the world in allowing people to exercise their right to be free. Now, it goes back into the medieval ages. The Magna Carta was set up by King John of England in the 12th century to allow people the freedom to live a private life and to express themselves in any way they can, so long as they do not violate the common laws. And that's been an accepted practice right across the world, except for some countries, and we cannot speak for them, but in communist China, people say that China is more peaceful than America. So there are contradictions there, that some state authorities can guarantee you safety and some cannot. But the human wish is always to be free, to have a mind of your own, to act on your own, to do things as you please. You may get up one day and decide to sleep. You may, or you might want to go to work or do something useful, or you might want to do nothing, say nothing. You may want to fast, or you may want to eat. You may want to pray, or you don't want to pray. You are not you are not forced to believe in anything. You have a choice. It's all about human choices. The right to be free. Now, recently we've seen a lot of changes, courtesy of one fanatic. And that fanatic is none other than our Prime Minister, James Marape. He's forced a constitutional change to regulate that we be Christians. Now, how do you regulate that we be Christians? Others, atheists, don't want to believe in anything, and they have a right to do so. They have that right. God is God, man is man. And as far as Christians believe, as we believe as Christians, God is God. Now, that may not be the same for others, Shintoists or Buddhists or Muslims or whatever. But it is a human right to practice any religion that you wish to practice, so long as it is not inconsistent with the laws of the land. So we still do not grasp the idea of why Marape would convince Parliament to legislate into the Constitution declaring that Papua New Guinea is a Christian nation. So where does that place other people who have their own beliefs, like the Buddhists? We have Buddhists in Papua New Guinea. And we have people who just don't want to believe in anything. But then again, you can't enforce that provision in the Constitution because it's their right. It's their right of choice. Now, that gives us a very serious concern about the man we have as Prime Minister and the manner in which he's pushing the law to please himself, so to speak. We have seen what he is able to do. We have seen how the Cyber Crime Act has come into place. And to this day, as I speak, I have been taken to court for cybercrime. And in the courthouse, now this is interesting, I was not allowed to travel anywhere out of Mosby since 2020 when I was arrested by police and charged under the Cyber Crime Act. And I did tell the Magistrate Puri Ni, that I called upon the Secretary for the Department of Lands, Samson Benjamin, a fraudster. And I said, I stand by that. And I'll prove in court that he's a fraudster. And I asked the magistrate to send me to the committal court. And I did go to the committal court. Now, I never got called into the committal court. Next thing I realized, there's a warrant for my arrest. When I go to the courthouse, the file has been removed, and I've made an application for a trial, and it's still pending. So, it's questionable how the system works in this country. There's so much fraud and deceit, conspiracy. Authorities and people who are in authority are criminals, and yet they occupy such offices, like the Secretary for the Department of Lands I'm referring to, Mr. Samson Benjamin. And I don't think he'll ever take me to court again, because there's one case outstanding that is going to resolve with me. But just looking at that, and looking at the man who's Prime Minister, I was watching how he responded to a journalist in New Zealand, and it was a big joke. He said, he told the journalist had asked him, what is your opinion on the Bougainville plight for freedom since the referendum has been passed? And he mumbled something that didn't make sense to me. He said he had to comply with Section 2 of the Constitution. It probably made sense there. But the journalist pressed him and said, what is your personal opinion? And he avoided it tactfully by saying that, I have no opinion. So this is the kind of person we have as Prime Minister of the country. Now it gets more serious. It gets more serious because last year he persuaded 80 fools on the floor of Parliament to pass the Counterterrorism bill. Yes, it is passed. And if you read that Counterterrorism bill in detail, there are sections that say that the police have the right to come and arrest anybody anytime without any reason. So it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder as to what sort of a Prime Minister you had, and how does it get to convince adults who are posing on the floor of Parliament as elected representatives to vote such a bill, vote in favor of such a bill. Now it only means two things. Either our elected representatives are stupid and dumb, or they have been bribed. They have been paid to pass that legislation. But in whose interest? Because you are going against the fundamentals of our Constitution, which gives us the right of choice. We can stand up and call you a fool. You can only take us to court. We can call you a thief. You can take us to court. For any, if you are pursuing any remedy against it, if you're suffering damages or physical harm or mental, mental pain and anything like that, you can only take us to court. But you cannot use the police to terrorize us. And now, recently, there's something going on. There's been something that's been posted on our Facebook page, our WhatsApp page, and the authorities are saying that now the government is watching everything we say on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and our phones. Now, how crazy can you get, Mr. Marape? Don't you realize that you are invading the privacy of people? Two people can have a conversation that you don't need to know. Not even the government has a right to know. You are eavesdropping on them. You are violating their basic human rights, to their right to privacy. Now, I don't expect you to understand that because I don't think you are capable of understanding anything. But what you're doing, Mr. Prime Minister, and your ministers, your government, and your police commissioner, and your minister of police is all wrong. Now, you need to retract it immediately. What other law are you going to pass that's going to restrict our rights? Yesterday, the Law Society conducted a march for the rule of law for the second time. Because they did so last year on the 18th of March, I think. And again this year they carried out the march for the rule of law against all the tyranny that you and your members of parliament are cooking up to suppress democracy. Interestingly, one senior lawyer went up to the podium and mentioned the NEC Act that you are passing. Prime Minister, my question is, why are you passing such an act that does not stack up with the Constitution? Are you seeking legal advice? Are you talking to learned people? Do you understand the law? The fundamentals of the law. Now, if you don't understand anything, you ought to be charged and arrested by the police. You need to be charged and arrested by the police immediately. For all the wrong you've done in the last 6 years that you've been Prime Minister, starting with the non-accountability of public finances. You know why you're passing the NEC Act? Have you forgotten that you instructed the Minister for Petroleum and Energy, the Honorable Karen Gakua, to put in a submission before Cabinet to make an unlawful payment of 100 million or 96 million to be specific to a company named Trans Wonderland as compensation? Now that's a very serious offense. The government of Papua New Guinea is not an insurance company for all companies that suffer losses. So how did you authorize that through Cabinet? Now, Mr. Kua, the member for Endemongo, and the former Minister for Petroleum and Energy, is still very much alive. And when the People's Anti-Corruption Movement, takes this matter to court, both you and the minister will testify that you had persuaded the National Executive Council to make an unlawful payment in compensation to a company. We do not even know whether that was approved by the State Department of Justice or the Attorney General. So what is the purpose of you trying to pass an NEC Act that gives the NEC overriding powers to do as they please and not to be held accountable to law? Mr. Prime Minister, I'm asking you this. I will send this to your Facebook page or your WhatsApp page. You're going to come out and speak for the country. Next week there will be a motion of no confidence against you. But my advice to you is that you don't need to prove anything. The country doesn't require your services, Prime Minister, anymore. And therefore I'm asking you to resign as soon as possible. Meaning you should submit your resignation today, announce that you have stepped down as Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. Because you have taken the country down the path of destruction, and we will not allow you. This country is not your private family business, nor is it the Tari Pori elected, nor is it the Hela province. This is Papua New Guinea, which is made up of 800 different nations with 800 different languages. And you have destroyed this country so much so in your last 6 years in the tenureship as Prime Minister of this country. And don't forget, I call on police to arrest you for you bribing members of parliament. And next week, there will be no camps, no nothing. Members will not be flying around to hotels, only to places where parliament pays for, or they live in the private quarters, and they'll go to parliament and they'll take the vote for any new nominee as Prime Minister. You should not qualify to be part of that process. And neither the Speaker of Parliament. The Speaker of Parliament, yourself, and the members of the Private Business Committee by now should have resigned from Parliament for sabotaging the Constitution. You've attacked democracy in a big way. You cannot give excuse that you are ignorant of the law because all the legal advice is available at your fingertips. It can be obtained from the Department of Justice. It can be obtained from the First Legislative Council. You've got the entire law, school of lawyers waiting to advise you. And what you have done, it was an attack on on democracy and the Constitution, and therefore you should all disqualify yourself, including the Speaker and members of the Private Business Committee. Disqualify yourself from participating in that the recall of Parliament. Now I hope I've made myself very, very clear to you. As I said, you attempted to bribe members of Parliament, which is not allowed by law, it's prohibited by law. If you read section, if you call your lawyer, you'll read section 62 of the Criminal Code, which says that no one and nobody should attempt to bribe a member of Parliament before a question on the floor of Parliament, including a motion of no confidence. And you've attempted to bribe members of Parliament. You've treated them to a hotel at Lolowata. You've given them gifts. You promised them everything. You offered 60 million kina to the governor of Enga, Peter Ibaras, not to vote against you. You've given another 50 million to Luther Wenge, not to vote against you. You've given 30 million kina to Powers Pakop. You've given 30 million kina to Powers Pakop to pass on to Asia Pacific PNG Limited to build a private hospital. Now, I don't see any reason why the police should not arrest you and charge you for under the criminal code. With that, Mr. Prime Minister, you can call your lawyers to advise you on that. We will look at what action we can take before the 8th of April next week. Thank you for watching me today. John Endemongo Kua, President of the People's Anti-Corruption Movement. Thank you.